You're listening to Dark Side LA. This podcast is not just for Lost Angelinos, but it definitely isn't for the faint of heart. Enjoy.
Hey.
First episode, you guys. I'm excited. I'm nervous, excited. Oh, I could throw up right now. How about you?
I'm super hyped.
All right. Hey, everybody. This is Dark Side LA, and I'm your host, April Bay. So, you guys, today's story, I'm going to take us back to Playboy in the 1970s. If you don't know what Playboy magazine is, it's a magazine and company that was founded by Hugh Hefner. And they are still based here in LA, technically Beverly Hills, but here in LA. And it's an awesome mansion. They have a mansion, by the way. I've been there. It's pretty cool.
Fun fact, John Lennon once assaulted a painting there.
John Lennon from the Beatles assaulted a painting there?
Yeah, one of the former Beatles wasn't too appreciative of Hefner's collection. So he was apparently inebriated, and then he extinguished his cigarette into the work by Henry Matisse. After that, Hefner did restore the painting, and Lennon was presumably allowed to continue visiting, but that's pretty crazy.
What did the painting depict?
Oh, I don't know what the painting was, but it was by Henry Matisse.
Okay, look that up. I'm going to note that right now. Do you know what we're going to talk about today's story? Who?
The Playboy Mansion?
No.
The Hugh Hefner?
The Hugh Hefner? No, not the Hugh Hefner.
One of the Playmates?
Yes. She was a playmate in the 70s, and her name was Dorothy Stratten. She was actually recognized not by Playboy agents or execs or editors or anything like that, but she was recognized by a local pimp. And from there, she rose to stardom. It starts in Canada in the late 1970s. Dorothy Stratten was just a teenager with dreams that stretched far beyond her job at a Dairy Queen in Vancouver, Canada. It was there that she caught the eye of Paul Snider, a local pimp, who saw in her a blend of beauty and innocence that he could exploit to climb the ranks of the entertainment world. Paul Snider was this 26-year-old who preyed on young girls. At the time that he met Dorothy, she was only 17 years old, and she was serving ice cream at a Dairy Queen to help her mom with the bills. So the day they first met, a friend that was with Paul Snider at the time said that the first time that he laid his eyes on 17-year-old Dorothy, his exact words were, "That girl could make me a lot of money." What a piece of shit. So obviously he was looking to exploit Dorothy. I don't know how he did it, but he got her to go out with him. I don't know how he finessed her into being interested in him. I don't know. But he did, right?
He just talked his way into it, I guess. He's this kind of sleazy guy.
It's disgusting, really, because your frontal lobe, your frontal lobe is not developed yet until you are the age of 26, 27. She was 17. And I get it if she was 30 and he was 36. Like, I get that. But she's still a teenager. She's still in high school, I believe. You're not an adult yet. You're not developmentally ready. But even aside from that, Dorothy was known to be very, very kind and sweet and a people pleaser. So she I feel like she wanted to please him. And yeah, the guy was just a predator. But, she's 17. She didn't know. She doesn't know that kind of stuff. I didn't know that kind of stuff when I was a teen. So he would bait Dorothy with gifts and sweet talk Dorothy. She even brought him home to meet her family. None of them really liked him. In fact, they were annoyed by him. but Dorothy still stuck by him. At one point, he managed to get Dorothy to take some nudes for him. He hired a professional photographer and photographed her nude in his apartment. Then Snider suggested that they send the photographs to Playboy, but Dorothy was really hesitant about it. She was afraid that her mom was gonna disown her and that her mom wouldn't allow her. She also needed her mother's signature. It was in the application requirement to get a signature from your guardian if you're under the age of 21. So Paul Snider was not backing down, okay? He eventually manipulated Dorothy into thinking that it was going to be the best move for her, which, okay, it was. It was the best move for her. In a way. Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. Which was kind of true, okay? But I'll get to that later. Anyways, Paul Snider eventually forges Dorothy's mom's signature and sends the photographs to Playboy. I mean, what are they going to do? They're not going to check or anything. So I guess that was an easy thing.
They're like, we got to check the signature here.
It's an easy thing to pull. And as it turns out, Playboy loved the photographs and wanted to fly her out for a party at the mansion where she placed 16th as the top contenders in the 25th anniversary Playmates. Can you look that up? Pull that up. Who placed number 1? Not that I'll know, but it's just interesting to know these things. 16th, that's pretty good. How many people were there?
It looks like Kathy Lovings was the winner.
How many people were in the contest?
It doesn't really say here.
Is that her right there? The Playboy magazine cover? The red one? The red magazine? Can you pull that up? Oh, she's pretty. You know, Playboy loves those all-American girl look. I mean, she looks like the girl next door. That's the beauty of it, right? You find these women on the magazines of Playboy and you're like, "Oh wow, she's Stacy from next door. I wonder what Stacy looks like naked." You know what I mean? I think that's, that was really great marketing for Playboy. Candy Lovings. I wonder if that's her real name. Anyways, although Dorothy did not place number 1, Hugh Hefner had big plans for Dorothy, such as working at the Playboy Club in Los Angeles, where she would earn some money for her family back home. That's real nice of her. So she worked there and would put money into her little sister's bank account. Wow. And she's still a teenager while this was happening. She flew to a different country, all of a sudden working for this huge company, this very known magazine, making money, and she's sending money back home. That's crazy. Like, where were a lot of 17 or 18-year-olds? Like, what were they doing? What are they doing now? It's just the contrast is just so...
That's right. She's the family commitment, or like taking care of the family. That was important to her, and that sounds like a really good person.
Some values, yeah, just some values. She helped her family. She helped Paul Snider, local pimp. I feel like part of the reason why she helped Paul with money was because she thought that he was the reason why she was able to have the opportunity. In a way, I mean, okay, he kind of did help her. Like, if he were not there, I doubt she would have sent photographs to Playboy, right? But if she had that idea, she could have done it all on her own. I mean, it's her looks and her personality, kind of, and, just the way she carried herself. So, I mean, also she was a people pleaser and she was still very young. So she was just, I guess, her upbringing, she was used to helping everyone around her. Around this time, Paul Snider was still living in Canada, but they were in this sort of long distance relationship. And she didn't realize that Paul Snider was riding her coattail to wherever she can take him. Because that's just pimp mentality. I don't know. Anyways, Dorothy, her natural charm and her striking good looks quickly made her a favorite in the Playboy scene. She also was named Playmate of the Month in August of 1978. And soon after that, they changed her name from Dorothy Stratten to Dorothy Stratten. She was formerly Dorothy Stratten. That's her real name. And as soon as Paul Snider heard the announcement of her Playmate of the Month, he flew to LA right away and proposed to Dorothy. And while Playboy was totally against it because it was bad for their image, Dorothy went against them and married him anyways in 1979 in Las Vegas, which, you know what, I find that to be true. If you're working for a company, or let's say you're this influencer or very sexy public figure on social media, your audience, your fans don't want to know that you're taken. They want to know, they want this, even though there's no chance in hell you're going to end up with one of these people, they'd like to think that there's a chance that you're available only for their eyes, for them only. It's just how it is. And I guess that's how, I get it. That's how Playboy wanted her to appear. So Playboy really had to keep the marriage hush-hush because they want their playmates to appear available and single and just having fun, partying at the mansion all the time. And while being married to Paul, Dorothy gained lots of gigs and plenty more exposure because of her Playmate issue in August. By 1980, she had soared to fame as Playmate of the Year, a title that brought her not just recognition, but also significant opportunities in acting. Dorothy's move to the silver screen seemed inevitable as she began to land roles in TV shows and movies, making the start of what many hoped would be a long and successful acting career. So there's this footage of them, I think when Hugh Hefner announced her as Playmate of the Year, you see Dorothy just saying thank you to everybody. And she didn't mention Paul, by the way. And then afterwards, she steps down from the stage. She gets off the stage and then, she's greeting everyone. And then she sits next to her husband, Paul. And they're at the table and he's just trying to hold her and just oh, I'm so proud of you, babe. But she just kept pushing his hand away thank you. So obviously you could tell, at least from the footage, that she was just that she was over him. Obviously, that it just looked like, judging from the footage. And I mean, I don't blame her. She met him at a local diner that she was working at, and he was just kind of sleazy about everything. He's, much older than her, and he was a pimp. So she was just you're just trying to use me. And I think at that point, people kind of clued her in. They're like, this guy is not the right guy for you. You're young and, you have your whole life ahead of you. And he's just trying to lock you down. He's trying to just, use you among other things. So she just got the ick. I get it. Despite her professional success, Dorothy's personal life was beginning to unravel under the weight of her new lifestyle. Married to Paul Snider in 1979, she found herself tied to a man whose insecurities grew as her star rose. Paul Snider's transformation from supportive partner to controlling and jealous husband was marked by increasing possessiveness. As Dorothy navigated her growing career, Snider's behavior became more erratic and suffocating. Snider tightened his grip. He went everywhere that Dorothy went and hardly ever let her go out by herself. I've been there. Yuck. I'm not doing that again. One of the ladies from Playboy, an editor, gifted her a puppy. Then 1 week later, that puppy died. When people asked her what happened to the puppy, she said that something fell on top of the puppy, crushing it. I mean, that's just a huge coincidence, right? Unless something really did happen to the puppy, which I doubt. I feel like, I don't know, it's just a red flag. He wouldn't let her go anywhere, and he was just possessive. And then I feel like, yeah, if someone gives her something, he's gonna be jealous, and he's gonna be like, oh, I want to give her that, or why didn't they give me something? He's just controlling person's mentality, and a narcissist. Anyways, Dorothy was really gaining popularity, and at this point, Hugh Hefner knew he had to strike while the iron was hot, and he connected her with one of his well-known talent agents, David Wilder. He met with Dorothy for coffee and instantly signed her. He said she was a beautiful girl who can act, and that's what Hollywood needs. She later went on to star in a handful of movies, and some were small roles, and some were a little bigger. And while she was doing her photo shoots and filming, Paul Snider, her husband, would be out there in Hollywood just doing what he could, just like hustling and working sleazy jobs, and just a lot of promoting for nightclubs and strip clubs and wet t-shirt contests. That's what I read. So it's just like, I mean, he needs to step up with his game here. Eventually, she and her husband found this 2-story apartment. It's kind of close to the freeway. Actually driven there a couple of times. It's right on the corner. You can't miss it. And they ended up getting that 2-story apartment, and they would share it with this doctor and his girlfriend. They apparently still needed roommates because their incomes were still not enough to pay the rent. Wow. Which is a shocker to me. I don't know. I'm kind of surprised by that, because I'm pretty sure Playboy pays pretty well. I don't know.
Los Angeles is expensive, but you would think that she's had several movies, the Playmate thing, and I don't know if she's doing like photo shoots and whatnot, but
she was making movies.
So that's kind of hard to believe, but I mean,
it is hard to believe.
Rent is expensive.
I guess. I don't know. Paul just decorated the apartment with pictures and posters and anything that had to do with Dorothy. Okay, so that was his. I wonder how the roommates felt about that. It just looked like a shrine for Dorothy. The guy was just obsessed with her, her looks, her image, and what she was going to become, because he knew that he would reap from that. He also started to build this sex chair that he was going to try and sell to bondage stores. I'm reminded of George Clooney from Burn After Reading. He's just down there in his basement, just building away, just hammering.
Neurotically building their sex toys.
So yeah, everything this guy did or tried to do for money was just related to sex. I mean, maybe that's all he knew. He was a pimp after all. And while all of this was going on, he was, of course, spending Dorothy's hard-earned money that she could have sent back to her family in Vancouver. But since they had joint accounts, it allowed him and gave him the freedom to get as much as he could. He ended up purchasing a Mercedes with the license plate Star 80. This was in the 1980s, hence the number 80 on the license plate, and he knew that Dorothy was going to be a star. So, not that she kind of wasn't already, but he knew that she was going to be this big star, right? So when he got on that, he was like, oh, I'm just motivated to get this license plate, even though he fucking doesn't do shit. Not only was she married to Paul, but Paul also acted as her manager and was in charge of most of her bookings. I think that she felt like she owed him still. She felt like she owed him still. But in reality, I really do feel like if she had a little bit more confidence and maybe pursued things on her own, then she would have accomplished just as many things, if not more, because she wouldn't have to carry Paul around with her. Just the weight of Snider. Just, her husband, her sleazy husband. Anyways, later on that year, her Fantasy Island episode aired. Then her career skyrocketed even more. At this point, I think that Paul knew that she was beginning to outgrow him, because she just received a role which would take place in New York City, which would be directed by a very well-known director, Peter Bogdanovich. The title of the romantic comedy was And They All Laughed, which would be her last film project. And on that project, actually, while she was filming it, she just was ignoring Snider's phone calls, her husband's phone calls. She was like, is that my husband? Yeah, no, I'm busy, type thing. Yeah, it was later said that Peter, the director, Peter Bogdanovich, wrote this role for her based on her backstory with her pimp husband. Now, Snider became even more insecure and demanding. He was worried about all the time she was spending in New York with Bogdanovich. And boy, did he have a good reason to be worried, because one, he's a jackass, and Dorothy deserved better. And two, she was with this big time director that she was spending more time with. Someone that was mentoring her and nurturing her in positive ways and leading her to the right path. So needless to say, the director, Peter, and Dorothy Stratten had an affair during the filming, and yeah, in spring 1980. So coincidentally, Dorothy Stratten was playing the role of a wife having an affair while her husband tries to discover her secret life with the help of a private detective. She, just like what Snider was doing in real life.
Is that like the art imitating life thing?
Art imitating life or life imitating, who knows what came first? No, it's art imitating life. Stratton and Bogdanovich rendezvoused to Europe together, and that trip really made her realize that she was no longer in love with Paul Snider and that she was going to divorce him. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people saw this coming because, I mean, they saw how Paul was possessive and controlling, and, I'm not sure if they knew he was a pimp. Do you think they did?
Well, if they didn't, then, that movie, They All Laughed, that was just
Huge coincidence.
huge coincidence.
I don't know how I would feel playing a movie that depicted or depicts or talks about is based on my life with my pimp husband.
Yeah, she's like, I don't want to play this role. This is my life.
Yeah. Or she's just like, oh, is this a reality show? A reality movie?
Or maybe she's like, oh, I could play this role really good. This is my life.
That is her life. Yeah. Not to make fun of, not to poke fun of that, because really we're poking fun of Paul Snider. This is just, he's a disgusting prick. Can I say that? Prick?
Yeah, you can say that.
Okay. Anyways,
It's very fitting in that position too.
yeah, I don't blame her. She, I usually don't condone cheating, but in this case, there's a lot of gray areas here. All right. So, all right, moving along. Now, when Dorothy returned to California, Paul Snider and Dorothy agreed to meet on the 14th of August to discuss their separation, because she was like, I'm done with you. So I'm sure, or I read on an article that she actually broke up with him over the phone, and she spent some time with Peter in his house for I think a whole week, and they were just in there. They never left the house. And Paul Snider, he hired some private detective to spy on her, and the private investigator was like, he relayed the information back to Paul because he was spying on Dorothy. He was like, yo, dude, yeah, they're still in his house. They haven't left the house in a week. It's not looking good, man. And so obviously if that happens to you, pretty much it's over, right? Your marriage is done. And so he tells Paul Snider that, and then he tries to get a hold of Dorothy, and slowly but surely he realizes that he's losing her, or he lost her. So they agreed to meet on the 14th of August to discuss their separation. Many people warned Dorothy not to meet with him, but she still had a soft spot for Paul in her heart. And to quote someone that knew her personally, that was her flaw, not being able to see the evil in people. Little did she know, what this evil person had planned for her.
She grew up in a small town and just trusting. She never really got that street smart thing going.
She didn't have time, The day that she met with Paul on August 14th, she was with Peter. She actually woke up at Peter's house, okay? And she was like, she lied to him. She told Peter Bogdanovich that she had a Playboy photo shoot at the Playboy mansion. And so he was like, okay, well, let me go with you. And she's like, no, stay in bed. I'll be back, And she was kind of just like, kind of short, because she was maybe in a hurry or she felt uncomfortable lying to this new man that she loved so dearly. And yeah, so she left. And that was the last time that Peter saw Dorothy. And that day, she actually met up with her little sister because her little sister was in town or in country because her little sister came from Canada. And I think they had breakfast together. And then she mentioned to her that she was going to go do something. She had to meet up with somebody and that she would meet her at 2 p.m. at the beach. And then her little sister was like, all right, okay, can't wait, love you and take care. And yeah, that was the last time her sister saw her too. So prior to meeting with Dorothy, Paul purchased a used 12-gauge shotgun. And that evening that he bought it, he met up with a group of his friends and he announced to everybody that he had bought a gun and was going to take up hunting. I don't know, if I were them, I'd be like, it doesn't sound like Snider to me. He's sleazy nightclub, strip club, wet t-shirt contest promoter. I don't know why is he getting this gun? Where's he going to go? Many hours before meeting up with Dorothy, Snider also casually brought up the subject of playmates who had unexpectedly met their demise. So he told his friends, for example, one of the previous playmates that had died a tragic death, Claudia Jennings, he mentions to them that editors pulled her nude photos before publicating them because she died. Can you find how Claudia Jennings died?
Jennings died in an automobile accident on the Pacific Coast Highway near Malibu, California. She was 29, and Jennings was featured in a 2000 episode of True Hollywood story.
Oh, okay. So yeah, apparently editors pull nude photos of playmates that had died from the next issue if there's still time.
So that was pretty recent, right there. October 3rd, 1979. That was like, right top of the news probably.
Oh yeah, that's probably how he got wind of it. He's like, oh, I remember this happened to this lady, and they pulled her cover or her issue. Him bringing his gun to his friends, saying he just took up hunting, and then all of a sudden he's talking about dead playmates, and editors pulling their issue if there's still time, and them knowing that Dorothy has an issue coming up. I'd say, like, I don't know, I'd at least talk to him. That's not a good sign.
Yeah, that's foreshadowing that.
At all. That's foreshadowing. He's almost like borderline confessing to them something that he has in mind. Anyways, on that day that Paul and Dorothy met up, Paul's roommates came home around 5 p.m. They saw that Paul's door was closed and they heard no sounds. They assumed that Paul and Dorothy perhaps made up and needed privacy. And an hour later, they watched the news and then they went out to eat. At around 7 p.m., another one of Paul's roommates, a doctor, came home and he too decided to give them some privacy. At 8 p.m., the two women roommates returned home. So there were, I thought it was just one. But there were two women roommates. At around 11, Paul's private investigator called the doctor on his private line since no one was answering Paul Snider's phone and it was continuously ringing. And the roommates noticed that too. They were like, oh yeah, the phone's been ringing. That's weird. They're not answering. Maybe they're asleep. Who knows? They were wondering themselves why Snider wasn't picking up his phone. The PI suggested for them to take a peek into the room. The doctor gave a few knocks before entering, and without any response, he decided to open the door. Upon opening the door, the roommates witnessed the most horrific, gruesome scene they had ever seen their whole lives. The first thing the lady saw was Paul Snider with about most of his head blown off. They found Dorothy lying across the end of a waterbed. They were both in the nude and there was blood everywhere. Dorothy's face was completely blown off as well. They called law enforcement right away. And when police arrived at the scene, they found a bullet hole from a 12-gauge Mossberg shotgun, the very same gun that Paul purchased. The bullet hole on her cheek, black ants crawling on her, and she was missing the tip of her left index finger. You know, this is probably the 10th case where I read about just ants crawling all over them afterwards. And it's usually in the summer, which makes sense because that's when all the insects and bugs are out. But that's, wow, that fast, huh?
It's crazy how fast ants get on stuff, and maybe they really like that the brains or like the nutritional value of or the smell, maybe like the blood and I mean the shotgun just blew everything away and it's leaving these scent trails for these ants probably.
That's terrible.
It's crazy.
Gosh. Well, not terrible that ants have that just sense, but I mean, it's terrible what happened to Dorothy. But that's insane too. Like ants just work real fast.
Ants and bugs, like I think that they use like fly larvae or maggots to like, they see how developed they are and that's how they can like determine the time of death a lot of times.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. From the maggots, the larvae.
It's just one of one of the that's one of the ways they do it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's wild. Anyways, I mean, it's obvious that Paul Snider had planned this to get back at Dorothy. I mean, he probably had her nude for a reason. Maybe he did sexually, he did sexually assault her, actually. I'll get to that later. But, he sexually assaulted her and he wanted her to be found in the nude and he wanted Playboy to pull her issue. I just feel like he just wanted to take everything away from her. Maybe because he thought that he was the reason why she was so successful. And he's like, well, she found someone else now that can help her. She doesn't need me anymore. I'm just going to take everything away from her because she's being ungrateful. I don't know. Maybe that was his motive, his reasoning. Disgusting. I mean, what do you expect? He's a narcissist. He was a pimp and he used women. He didn't, who knows if he really, really, really cared about her. Obviously he didn't. He killed her. I mean, it's just scary what a narcissist and a toxic person is capable of.
Yeah, it's crazy that fine line between love and hate.
I don't even. Yeah, it's. I don't know. I've loved people. I've loved someone so much that I don't even see where the line of hate I could ever, touch that line, even get near it. So that's not love. He was obsessed and just obsessed with her body, her looks, and just using her, exploiting her. No one knows for sure what transpired during Paul and Dorothy's meeting, but blonde hair was found in Snider's fist. The only scenario that makes sense was that Dorothy was sitting on a corner of the bed when Paul Snider put the gun up to her cheek. She tried to shield her face with her left hand, thus destroying her left index finger when Snider pulled the trigger. A half an hour later, Snider turned the gun on himself and fell on top of the shotgun. Kind of makes you wonder what he did for 30 minutes. No, wait, I don't want to know, actually. There were bloody handprints on Dorothy's buttocks. Oh yeah, Paul had ants crawling all over him too. Near Dorothy was the love seat. The love seat, the sex chair.
Oh, the sex chair.
Yeah. According to police, it was set in a position for possible rear entry intercourse. Oh my gosh.
Well, I think you just found out what he did for that 30 minutes.
That's disgusting. And how you said it like that just kind of gave me chills. It made me want to vomit at the same time. Oh my goodness. There was evidence that the seat had been used and she had been fastened to it with medical tape. This guy fucking had this planned. Despicable. Be careful out there, you guys. There's a lot of Paul Sniders out there. The argument soon turned violent, and as Snider had other plans, he had come armed with a gun. He sexually assaulted his wife and then shot her to death before killing himself. The incident was first brought to light by Snider's private detective, who called their mutual friend, Dr. Kushner, in order to break into the room where the incident had happened. Yeah, so that's when he called the roommates. He called the doctor. He's like, look, something weird's going on. I need you to open the door. Just break it down. He's not answering the phone. That's when the roommates saw the scene. And I believe I read somewhere that when they opened up the door, when they broke it down, they didn't believe what they were seeing. They thought it was just like mannequins, like a movie set,
That close range and shotguns, it's a huge mess. I can just imagine.
They almost kind of thought it was like a prank, like a joke, like a disgusting, despicable, evil prank. But it sadly was not. Autopsy reports suggested that Dorothy Stratten was assaulted before and after her death. The death of the Playmate was one of the headlines of many national dailies the next morning. So it was all over headlines. Obviously, news broke to Playboy and Peter and Dorothy's family. It's really sad. Dorothy being on the headlines and on the front pages of those magazines and the newspapers was not the type of cover that she wanted to be on, that she would have wanted to be on. Her cover, the next issue of Playboy was what, like a week away or whatever, and she was just anticipating for that, and instead she gets her life taken away in a very tragic way by some scumbag who she thought loved her. And instead of being on the cover of Playboy, she's on the cover of these national dailies. It's fucking tragic.
That is a huge turnaround.
Dorothy Stratten's life and tragic end have been the focus of numerous films and documentaries, each trying to understand and explain the complexities of her relationships and the environment that ultimately failed her. Her story is a reminder of the need for systemic changes in how the entertainment industry supports and protects its talents, particularly those who are young and vulnerable. But you know what? That's kind of what you have to expect from LA and businesses and the entertainment industry. I mean, they will pulverize you. They will eat you alive. That's just, people have this dream and just this idea that when they get to LA that they're going to be famous all of a sudden because they took a couple of acting classes. And, not every case is going to be like Dorothy Stratten's case, because I'll tell you right now, that's an anomaly case, okay? An anomaly story, what happened to her. And I'm not talking about how she died. I'm talking about how she reached stardom, how it all happened so fast for her. That's not going to be the case. So in case you're listening to this and you're in Idaho or, I don't know, whatever state really, Oregon, or you are in California and you do decide to move to LA, please do not expect for things to happen right away. Okay. It does, take some good work. And that's why I don't really want to be in that industry. I mean, I do want to be in filmmaking, but it's an industry that will eat you up, gobble
That's
you up.
gobble you up and spit you out. They'll like squeeze every ounce of blood out of you if they could.
Every ounce of blood, dignity, everything. So, yeah, don't force anything. Don't have these high expectations when you move to Hollywood because it's not easy. Plus, I'm hearing that rent is fucking ridiculous. Okay, people are paying like $2,000 for a studio. Yeah, so just have your ducks in a row before you make your move and have
You,
a plan.
the good thing about nowadays is people can use social media wherever they are, and if they get known that way, and then they might have a lead or a foot in the door before they actually make that move.
Yeah, yeah. Like, for instance, you do submit photos to Playboy and they like you and they're like, we welcome you to the Playboy family and you work with Playboy, you submit your photos through social media or email or whatever. That's the amazing thing about social media and the digital age. You can do stuff that you weren't able to do back then. So I say take full advantage of that first, do kind of like some influencer stuff and just make your mark in the industry that way.
And it really might help somebody realize what their talent is. Is it acting, looks,
Modeling.
sports, or creativity, or whatever the talent is? But one could probably vet that out a little bit better with the modern day social
Okay, I gotta
media.
tell you guys that Paul Snider, yeah, he's a prick and he's from Canada, but there's a lot of Paul Sniders in Los Angeles. There's a lot of Paul Sniders everywhere, like on this earth. Okay, so when you move, be wary of those type of people because there's a lot of Sniders out there in LA, and there's different levels. Some of them are just looking to hook up, get some, as much as they could. And there's that other level where they're, gonna sweet talk you and then they're going to exploit you or traffic you. It's a scary world out there. So just, you see these magazine covers or these people online living a lavish lifestyle. Don't be so quick to try to get there, to get to the top, and also not everything you see on social media is real. Okay, you don't know if they're renting that mansion. You don't know if it's their sugar daddy's mansion. You don't know. So just not everything you see is real. As we conclude this look into the life and death of Dorothy Stratten, we are reminded of the dual nature of fame, the bright glow of the spotlight and the dark shadows it casts. Her legacy, marked by tragedy, continues to influence discussions about celebrity culture and the protection of those within it. Thank you for joining us in this journey through a chapter of Hollywood history. Well, Playboy, kind of Playboy history, right? Thanks for joining us for today's episode. Until next time, let us carry forward the lessons from Dorothy's story, hoping for a brighter, safer future for all in the spotlight. All of you influencers, all of you artists, actors, freaking millions of you actors or, people trying to make it out there in Hollywood, models, please be careful, okay? I could go on and on about this all day. Not everyone in LA is going to help you. Even those that are, let's pretend, okay, a big time Hollywood producer is like, yeah, I'll get you a role. I'll do that. I'll do this for you. Why don't we go back to my house and hey girl, cameo for my doggy. Yeah, so big time producers, directors, even if they say they can help you, as long as you do something for them, I don't know. That's up to you. That's on your own terms. But personally, it's not worth it. Okay, it's not worth it. A lot of them are married anyways, and yeah. But I guess you can look at it from an angle where you could blackmail them and use them, but I suggest not doing that either, because once you do that, once you blackmail a celebrity or someone that's known, not only in Hollywood, but anywhere that's known, you will get blackballed. You will be known as the girl who was the mistress of this famous guy. And yeah, it's not going to be good for you or your career. So I suggest you don't do that either. They also make you sign contracts, these celebrities, these NDAs. So yeah, if you're thinking about doing something like that, I don't know who I'm talking to, but there's women out there, girls out there who are trying to make it, and they think by sleeping with someone that's in the industry or having a relationship with a married person in the industry is going to help them. Usually it's not. And you'll always be known as that girl who was the mistress of this famous person. And you don't want that either. So yeah, work for it. You have a goal, just stick to it. Don't get distracted by parties in LA. You know, people are always promoting for like this party at a club or someone's house, whatever. Yeah, don't give in. You're better than that. Okay. All right. I love you guys. Till next time, you guys can find me on Spotify, Dark Side LA, and I also have another true crime channel on Spotify called April Bay Files. So check me out there. I talk about all sorts of true crime stories there. So find me on Instagram and TikTok, April Bay Files and Dark Side LA, and Spotify. Don't forget. Love you guys. Bye.